Jesus says, he says, just pay the tax like that. Why? Because society would erupt. He went by the cultural norms of every changing society that time. Why? Because God knows how society runs because of the hardness and the stubbornness of mankind, and he realizes you're just so weak, you're just so stubborn, so no, I'm not going to give you a burden greater than you can bear, which is scriptural. As a matter of fact, in Revelation chapter 2, God would put up with some of their sins so much to a point that he says, I'm not going to put upon you a greater burden than just these requirements. So God understands that. So because of culture of society, you better be thankful that your God's that type of God. You might say, why? It's not just society, it's you.
Yeah, come on.
Because God didn't demand out of your life as soon as you got saved, okay, make sure you do this, all these things. You didn't get that from your pastor when you first came to this church. He let the Lord change you. He let the Lord work in your life. Why? Because God is patient with you. So God patiently works in your life, and you better thank God for that. Otherwise, you would have had a mental breakdown, and some of you would not be here today. Some of you would not even preach on that pulpit today. So don't be all fleshly and start whining about why did God do that back in the Bible. Just as much as people, if God gave them 200 years left to breathe in the future, just as much as they would whine in the future, why did God allow this to happen at the year 2022? Yeah, I wonder why. Maybe because society would burst in half and tear their hair and say, God, you're too hard for me. So God can't win either way. He goes by the culture of society, they accuse him of being immoral. If he doesn't go by the culture of society, they accuse him of being too hard and legalist. You know what your point is? You have a whining mentality. You just have a human nature that just wants to whine about everything. That's your problem, okay? So when they bring up slavery in the Bible or whatnot in the Bible, one, you better realize God is merciful. He goes by the culture of society. He also goes by the weakness, see, of flesh. So God realizes that, so he doesn't give you a burden greater than you can bear. Thirdly, the reason why God would do that, you'll realize that there are other nations out there and cultures out there who are far worse than how God does things. Okay, you want to pick on the Bible? Hey man, why don't you pick on the other nations during the Old Testament that were sacrificing babies? These people would sooner defend voodoo and occult witchcraft and Celtic druids. They would try to butter that up, that society, that it wasn't that bad at that time, or Egypt at that time. And they don't talk about what? The pagan sacrifices, the Aztecs during that time in South America, human sacrifices. Oh, they don't harp so much on that one. Instead, they have a respect of that culture and that nation of that time. So you go to their art museums at Stanford and go, wow, that's fascinating. But when you pull up the Bible, they don't say, oh, that's fascinating. They go, oh, how cruel. Look at that, man. These hypocrites. You know, I went to their schools. They don't fool me, bud, all right? They might fool the rest of the people with their PhDs, but guess what? I'm going to play along their game and make them look like the fools that they are, man. Biased, stereotype, the most discriminatory people that I met anywhere in all my life.